listening to Let Your Voice Be Heard.
Today, this is the topic. Let's talk about sex. How do we handle this issue?
There are a lot more risky behaviors in drinking or drug use that affect sexual activity.
You might build a community. The police officers make more of an attempt to talk to people. They're going to be people who just don't like the cops. So when we have our guns, then, what's the solution?
Do you welcome homosexuals in your church, Pastor?
I'm never going to treat you differently. Never going to put you down. I'm going to say this to you, though. I'm not gay.
They're not stripping or searching or frisking me.
Let Your Voice Be Heard radio.
Every Sunday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m.
We're going to be talking about the fast food strikes. They actually, the McDonald's near me that I've actually never been inside of it. I'm not going to joke. I don't eat fast food, so sorry, people. But they were actually, I passed by and I see a lot of people and a lot of signs. And I'm just like, what's going on? So I didn't even know until I went back to my office and I started doing some research. And then I realized that I'm like, oh, this is like a movement. And it's actually going around all over New York City. And I think it's expanding to a lot of other states. And it wasn't just McDonald's. Like I heard also that workers at Burger King and Wendy's were striking. So to give you a little bit of a background, workers at McDonald's, Burger King, and Wendy's restaurants across New York walked out, that was on Monday, in a one-day strike to demand better pay and the right to unionize, calling for minimum wage to more than double from what it is currently in New York, $7.25 to $15 an hour. What? And they also want to end what they called abusive labor practices. So we have on the line Greg Basta, who is the Deputy Director of New York Communities for Change. And that is an organization of low-income communities of color that has been working with the fast food workers since the campaign started in the summer of 2012. Greg, are you with us?
I am with you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for being here, Greg. Greg, you're one of my people that I found on Twitter, and I hit up on Twitter, and it worked out. That is my favorite method of contacting people. I am a Twitter gal.
That's the times now. That's how you do it.
It is. Every time I need a guest, I'm just like, who is on Twitter that I follow, that people that I know follow, and it's interesting. The way I see it, if you're on Twitter and you're active on Twitter, then you are already like involved in the community. Because what else is there?
It's such an important way to keep connected with the community and to get the message broadcasted.
No, you're absolutely right. I find that Facebook is a little more insular. It's about families and babies and food.
Right. Exactly.
But this is not a segment about Twitter, even though I would love that segment one of these days. I just wanted to start talking about, this the fast food workers and their strike, and you've been involved in it. Your organization has been involved in it. And I want to know, how did it start about? You said it started in the summer of 2012. What led it to, how do you guys become organized and get all these fast food workers to actually walk out of their job? I mean, that is, if you make $7.25 an hour, that is not an easy feat. I mean, that's a days that you don't make money.
Absolutely. We have been working, our organization has been working on worker justice issues for years, and it's something that we had talked to our members about, that we knew a lot of people in our community worked at fast food restaurants. And we also know the wages they pay, and we also know the cost of living in the city and how those two are not really compatible, the wages in the city and minimum wage and the cost of living and raising a family in the city. So we started basically experimenting by going to different fast food places, talking to workers a little bit, seeing what was going on with them. And it just slowly but surely, talking to a few workers who were networking with us, with other workers, and explaining to them what their rights were, empowering them on, that there were a lot of people in their community that had their back. And these workers were angry. These workers knew how little they were being paid and how much they were being underpaid, coupled with, so many of them had stories of wage theft, of being forced to work off the clock and being forced to work overtime without, signing off on overtime and getting paid time and a half. So,
right.
It was a slow movement that started before the summer of last year that really has, snowballed within the last 6 months.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for that, Greg. And actually, to our listeners, we're talking to Greg Basta. He's the Deputy Director of New York Communities for Change about the fast food strikes. If you have a question or a comment, if you are a fast food worker, if you're demanding change, if you think the system is all right, we want to hear it. The phone number is 212-650-6903, or you can tweet us at BeHeard_radio. So, Greg, I know that I was reading a lot of information about this, and a lot of things that came up was that they also want to change abusive labor practices, and I say that in quotes because it's like the term that I kept seeing everywhere. What exactly does that mean? I mean, when I hear abusive labor practices, I'm thinking sweatshops and workers working 20 hours with like no air conditioning and no food, things that you hear about in China, in Thailand, and I know that it's definitely a stereotype, but what exactly does it mean for a McDonald's worker?
Well, you actually mentioned one perfect example, and an example that happened a few weeks ago. You remember a few weeks ago we had that pretty terrible heat wave. There was a McDonald's in Washington Heights where the air conditioning had been broken for some time, and the workers were being forced to work in a kitchen that's already a really hot kitchen. You're behind these grills filled with frying oil, and it's well over 100 degrees in this McDonald's behind the kitchen with no AC, and the owner wasn't doing anything about it, and the workers just had to keep working, and one of them passed out on the job, collapsed. The other workers had to call paramedics, and we actually have pictures of her being rushed out of paramedics, like passed out in a wheelchair. That's something that's common, something that happens all the time, where these workers just have to keep doing what they're doing, and a lot of times the owners don't care if the air conditioning's broken or if they haven't eaten or whatever. I mean, that's totally abusive labor practice.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and Greg, I have a question. I want to know, actually, if your organization is what laws or standards you're trying to pass on a national basis, because it seems like, from different franchises will have different owners who do different things. And I'm thinking, like, if there's certain things that's going to happen in one McDonald's that doesn't happen in every single McDonald's. And if we raise the prices, or we raise the wages that they're getting paid, doesn't that affect the franchise owner and them making business, as opposed to just only affecting the corporate side of things?
Those are two really great questions. First of all, on the legal side of job protection and safety and things like that, nationally, I don't think we're quite there yet. But I can tell you that what we're working on in New York is the Attorney General's office is already doing investigation onto wage theft within the fast food industry. Studies show that approximately 85% of fast food workers have been a victim of wage theft in one form or another. And again, that includes not being paid your right amount. You've heard about these McDonald's where they paid their workers with a debit card that actually charges, it actually charges a fee when they go to use it, so they're actually getting charged for their paycheck. Being forced to work off the clock, for overtime. These are examples of wage theft. And they're illegal, and they're obviously unjust. Workers who work a certain set of hours should get paid for those hours. So that's something that we're looking into right now in terms of the legislation and what we can do about it. As far as the second question, obviously, ultimately, the target, as you said, is the corporations. I mean, McDonald's is the one that made $5.5 billion in net profit. But it does start with addressing the franchise owners on this. They are the first level of people that we need to talk to. They are the ones that are, as you said, totally involved in some of the unfair labor practices, some of the abusive practices. So that is certainly the primary target on that front. But you're right, it is the corporations that ultimately are the ones that make the profit, and that the ones that we have to go after. So, they're the ones that we ultimately do think need to make some changes. And we don't think workers should suffer. We don't think franchise owners should suffer. But we're pretty confident that there are ways that McDonald's can still make billions of dollars of profits while also being fair to both the franchise owners and the workers.
Right. Thank you for that, Greg. And actually, it's true. I remember seeing something online about how if you were going to pay your workers $15 an hour, it would only cost the consumer like a few cents more. I'm not sure exactly how they made that math, but it definitely is 68 cents.
And I saw something on CNN that said if we charge 22 cents extra on the Big Mac alone, we can pay workers $15 an hour.
Go ahead, Sam.
And by the way, that's just to maintain the billions of dollars of net profit that these fast food workers, that these fast food companies are earning. It's fine that CEO and corporation revenue and profits have skyrocketed by hundreds of percent over the last 2 decades, while minimum wage and living wages have been stagnant. So.
I'm so sorry about that, Greg. I was talking on while you were talking. That was very rude of me. So I apologize for that.
No problem.
No, I was just asking our Stanley here if he said he had a question. I thought we were off air. Stan, you may go ahead, and I will not disrupt you this time.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, Greg, I do have a question in regards to the $15 an hour, and I guess I'm going to be the one that throws a little cold water on it. I don't get paid $15 an hour, and I have a college degree. So why should they get paid?
So that's
No. I mean, so my question is why these are entry level jobs. $10 an hour or $11 an hour, I think is fair because that puts you, I think, at a living wage. And even in New York, $11 an hour can at least get you something. Why is it necessary for them to get $15 an hour? I feel like you're possibly undercutting people who are in professional industries who are not getting that much.
That's a really great question, and I obviously can't speak to your job and what you get paid. So, but as far as the demand for fast food workers making $15 an hour, I can answer on a personal level. I have an issue when politicians and organizations talk about fighting for good jobs. In my opinion, all jobs are good jobs. I don't think that everyone across the board should be making a flat $15 an hour, regardless of the skill level. What I do know is that workers making minimum wage in New York, that's on average, depending on their hours, that means that they're making between $10,000 and $15,000 a year. That is less than half of what you need to be able to cover the cost of living in New York City. And even as you said, at $9, $10 an hour, these are not. It's no longer an entry-level job. The median age of somebody who works at a fast food restaurant is 28 years old. The economy tanked a few years ago. It is no longer 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are getting these jobs. There's not that many jobs around to have. So we either have a system where we have millions of more people relying on social welfare, on food stamps, on welfare programs that actually cost taxpayers money, or we actually help stimulate the economy by providing higher wages and more of these jobs. I mean, $15 an hour, as we just said, and this goes across all industries, not just fast food. These are industries that are dominated by corporations that, even with the economy tanking, are making record-setting profits. It's actually kind of gross.
Right. No, I think that's kind of like when we compare it to the people who own these corporations and they make billions. It's just like, really, guys? You can't give me $2 more? And I mean, borrowing from what Stanley was saying, the average, like if you make $7.25 an hour and you work 40 hours a week, in a year you make about $15,000. Right. I make more than 4 times that amount. Yeah, more than 4 times, definitely more. And I still struggle with money. Okay, so maybe I shop a little more. Maybe my rent is a little more expensive. Maybe I have a car. Maybe I have a few more things that other people making $15,000 can't afford. But it's still a struggle. And I find that the reason why sometimes I'm still like, guys, I don't have any money, is because I live in New York City. So is this something that is New York City issue? I mean, if you make $7.25 an hour and you are living in, I don't know, Iowa, I'm pretty sure that you can get a lot more bang for your buck. If I make my salary in Iowa, I would be like the mayor of the city. Like I'm sure I would. Okay, maybe not. But I'd be getting up there. But in New York City, it's basically like the minimum that you can to just live comfortably. So I don't know. I mean, I know that this is kind of expanding to other cities, but I want to know. I mean, I find that it's a very New York problem that $7.25 just doesn't cut it. What is your take on that?
That's a great question. And one thing I just want to add with regards to the $15 an hour salary, a shameless plug for my organization. We are a nonprofit that always has to struggle to make ends meet to bring in revenue. And we're not asking for a wage that we don't pay our own workers. Our workers get paid $15 an hour. That's a wage that we as a nonprofit who always has to fundraise to make ends meet. That's what we're asking for. But you're right, on this level, obviously it's different in New York. I'm a born and raised Brooklynite, so I'm always going to be arrogant about what New Yorkers have to struggle with and what we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. But, of course, the cost of living is going to make this problem that much worse. But you know what? If you're working 30 to 40 hours a week on $7.25, making between $10,000 and $15,000 an hour, $10,000 and $15,000 a year, that's a problem anywhere. That's a problem in any urban area. And where the strike has expanded and where this movement has expanded in cities like Chicago, Seattle, Milwaukee, Detroit. I mean, these are urban cities that are always going to have higher cost of living than rural America, and so $10 to $15 an hour. I mean, I'm sorry, $7.25 an hour in Chicago certainly isn't going to cut it. And you have all these urban areas with thousands of fast food workers that are struggling to make ends meet on a salary that is almost half of what they need to actually make it.
Yeah, that's so true, Greg. And I just wanted to say, back to what Stanley was saying about, the fact that certain people, like even if you go to school, get a college degree, you're still not making, up to $15 an hour. And I feel like that has to do a lot with our attitude in society. Like, let's just say you get a 4-year degree, at least you can say, at least I'm not making minimum wage. Times are bad, but at least there's people that work, at least there's people doing worse than me. And I guess Stanley was saying that, I won't have that leverage.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I get where you're coming from.
Well, not you personally, but I think that's a mentality that a lot of people have, especially when it comes to why people think that one of the reasons why they say the minimum wage should not be raised for menial jobs.
I think the bigger issue. Go ahead, Mike.
And with that though, that's why we have to realize that I think, unlike trickle down economics, this actually is a rising tide lifting all boats type thing. That if let's say if people making less than $15 an hour are annoyed that people that's making $7.25 are now going to make $15, the problem is that this ends up helping the entire economy, because then people can buy and spend more and then can create more jobs. It's one of the reasons that the economy is so stagnant right now. It's 160. We're about at 140 to 160,000 jobs a month, but those jobs are so low paying that they're not really getting much more than the unemployment benefits we're getting in the first place.
We have to be a little bit more honest. Just because the rising tide lifting all boats argument is okay, but at the same time, when you raise minimum wage, you raise living wage.
But that only assumes that people are obsessed with that the upper levels of the corporation need to make that much of a profit. That assumes that.
That's fair, but
I don't think it's fair.
How about this,
I
gentlemen?
think it's completely unlikely that corporations aren't going to say, since everybody's making $15 an hour, we're not going to raise prices. So that
one moment there. Greg, actually, can you hold on a moment? We have to go on a short break, and everybody's getting a little excited. You guys can talk that out and then rehash that during the commercial break. Greg, when we come back, we definitely have more questions for you. We want to hear what you have to say. Guys, just stay tuned in. We're talking to Greg Basta. He is the Deputy Director of New York Communities for Change, and we're talking about the fast food strikes. We'll be right back.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3.
Thank you, Stanley, for that. Hey, we are back. This is Let Your Voice Be Heard on WHCR 90.3 FM. We're talking to Greg Basta, who's on the line. He's the Deputy Director of New York Communities for Change. And before we had to go on a break, because we really had to, you gentlemen were talking and having a heated discussion about something. And actually, I want to throw it to you. Bakari. Sorry, I was about to say your name wrong. And you said you had a question, and
Sure.
a statement and a question for Greg.
So, Mike said that he was informing that the rising tide lifting all boats. If you raise the minimum wage for people who are making $7.25 to upwards to $15, then other wages would naturally rise as well, because rising tide lifts all boats. Exactly. My counter argument to that, which I'm sure you have a response for, is that when you raise those wages, you're also going to raise prices in the economy as well, because of course the corporations are going to look for that same profit margin. I mean, the board of trustees is not going to be like, oh, this is okay. So this is what you're advocating for. Do you have a response in regards to that?
Sure. Well, first let me say that it's actually a little inaccurate when any of us say that we're looking to raise the minimum wage, because when you factor in inflation and economic productivity, the minimum wage has been dropping. Even at the most conservative estimate, if you base the minimum wage just strictly on inflation, the minimum wage should be over $9.50 right now. So the fact that anybody's talking about raising the minimum wage and that's going to dip into profits, no, corporate profits have expanded exponentially in a way that has just created the largest income inequality and income disparity that this country's ever seen. So when we talk about lifting the minimum wage to levels that actually make it more comfortable for workers to live, I think that you're right. A lot of corporations might try to take the profits and, take the costs and pass that on to the consumer. And we should all be outraged by that because it's been corporate domination and, frankly, corporate lobbying of this country that has created this tremendous income disparity, an income disparity that does not exist in any other modern, developed Western nation. So I think maybe we should worry about that a little bit more than we should worry about corporations retaliating by passing the cost off.
Yeah, Greg, would you say that's kind of like fighting the free market with the free market in a good sense? I guess. You know what I'm saying? That if you're saying if people get enraged, then they stop buying these products from companies like that, like kind of what you're doing with the boycott here. And I guess I already kind of boycott McDonald's.
Me too, but it's not because of their working conditions. I have to admit, it's because I don't eat fast food.
That's part of it. I won't go into a Walmart, and thank God there's none in Brooklyn. So.
Yep. Oh no, there's one in Queens, Metropolitan. Anyway,
I still wouldn't go.
Sorry about that.
Well, my students every semester get a rant about how much I hate Walmart.
Yeah. No, it is very difficult as a consumer, and especially a consumer that if you don't have a lot of money, you very have few options, and sometimes you can't do anything else but go and buy from the dollar menu or Walmart. Like, I definitely understand. It's definitely a morality issue for me, and I hate it. But I want to talk about, and I have to admit here, I have never had a job that messes up my manicure. So, and I grew up very poor. I grew up in East New York, Brooklyn. My mother still makes like a little tiny bit above minimum wage, and she works her booty off. Like, I'm telling you, my parents both work really, really hard. I'm just a little bit of a hustler, and I was really smart when I was a kid, so I would actually tutor the neighborhood kids for money, and it actually turned out really, really well. So I admit that I never had a job, that I never had to take a McDonald's job. But I have two younger sisters, and to this day, they still do. They work at the supermarket, they do jobs like that, and they get paid very little. But it also kind of reminds me that they are entry-level people. They're just starting to enter the workforce, and they have to start somewhere. All they need is to build up a little bit of a resume to look like they didn't just sit at home playing video games all day. And this brings me back to this McDonald's thing. I think we can all say that, yeah, $7.25 doesn't work for anybody. It does require to be a little more. I believe that they're trying to raise it to $9 an hour by 2016. Still measly. I'd say that at least $10, $11 is a little bit better. But they are entry-level jobs, and they are for teenagers who are just trying to get a foot in the door and make a little pocket change for themselves. So when we think about the living wage, we're talking about adults here that need to pay rent, they need to pay car, they need to pay babysitter, they need to pay school fees, they need to do a lot of things that a teenager doesn't have to. And it brings me back to maybe those people shouldn't be in those jobs. Those jobs were not created for them. And that's a whole other issue that I don't know if McDonald's is culpable for. What do you say to that, Greg?
Well, sure. And again, the median age of fast food workers in New York City is 28 years old.
Right, and that's a lot. That's a very old age for a fast food worker.
That's a very old age, and that's people raising families. Whether or not McDonald's is culpable directly for that, well, they're certainly enjoying the record-setting profits that they're making at a time when we're talking about, high rates of foreclosure and high rates of job loss. So I certainly don't think it's McDonald's fault completely, but I certainly don't think they're trying to make things better for anybody.
I think in the way you're trying to point it is that if McDonald's put like a block on people from like 22 and said, listen, look, it's rap. We're just not accepting you.
Yeah.
And we're just not accepting you. Then the outrage would be the other side. Oh, there's all of these open positions and McDonald's isn't accepting people. So I think that's sort of the counter side. Do we accept a whole bunch of people who are over the age that generally we think of for fast food workers, or do we pay them more?
Yeah, that is true. But Selena, you said you had a question or a statement?
Yeah, I think that's a good question too that we should all deliberate upon. But I also wanted to point out that whether you agree that minimum wage should be raised or not for these workers, the outrage also needs to be the fact that how much money it costs taxpayers. Like, we all know that because Walmart workers and the majority of McDonald's workers are getting paid minimum wage, they rely heavily on the government, whether that's, like we mentioned, food care or they're on the welfare program. So again, our tax dollars are being fueled to these employers that make billions of dollars of money. Like, I don't even know. I know that the CEO of Walmart, their profits are just ridiculous, but I have to pay for their employers, to eat because they can't afford to eat. even though they're working
You don't have to
at
pay it
your
in the store.
No.
But you pay it on your tax
Yes,
bill.
I'm paying it.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like, and that's another way. That's another position where our outrage should be directed as well.
No, yeah, absolutely. And actually, Greg, borrowing actually from what Selena said, what are you guys at New York Communities for Change, or what are you guys doing to bring this about so people can care, people can listen to it? Like, what exactly kind of activism are you doing other than I know walkouts and strikes, and I've seen you on the streets, but sometimes, I mean, I definitely know that strikes, I mean, they definitely work for getting some media attention, but not necessarily to make a lot of change. I mean, is there some kind of policy change? Are you talking about some legislative issues that you guys are getting involved in?
That's an excellent question. I think there will be legislative demands as we move forward. I think it's important to note that at just a little over a year old, when we're talking about an industry with like literally millions of workers worldwide, this is still a movement in its infant stages. But one thing that you talked about the word community, and I think that is actually a critical component of working with fast food workers, and I just think labor organizing in general, because let's face it, I mean, we all know labor organizing, labor unions are shrinking rapidly. They're the smallest they've ever been, and I think a lot of that has been a lack of engagement with the community. You know, we're a member-based organization, and we're a neighborhood-based organization. We have neighborhood-based chapters, like an East New York chapter, a Brownsville chapter, an East Harlem chapter. And I think one of the driving forces in building momentum for this and getting the public word out is that our members that don't work at the fast food companies, our members that care about tenants' rights and education and foreclosures and housing, understand what the impact of these jobs have on their community. And I think getting that awareness out is really critical, you know, that these fast food workers' issues are our issues, and our issues are their issues, so that this is not just a labor issue, this is a community issue. I think that component of this whole campaign is why we have had such incredibly positive feedback from the neighborhoods around these fast food places where we've been working, where literally dozens and hundreds of people are coming out from these neighborhoods that don't work at these places to stand in solidarity with the workers.
Right. And how can we get involved in this if we, you know, as just part of the community and we want to stand up for workers' rights, even if we don't work with them?
Sure. Yeah, you can sign up. The easiest way to do it is to sign up at fastfoodforward.org. That we'll be able to email you updates on when the next actions are and what's coming up and what's coming in store. For New York Communities for Change, we're always posting updates where we're at our most active to give people information. We have a really vibrant community on Facebook. You can go to facebook.com/nychange. And we just have a high rate of engagement among our members discussing these issues and getting information. So I think those are the two best places to stay informed.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Greg. We really appreciate having you on the show. I think you gave us a lot of really good information and definitely a new perspective on it. I know as a person that I've never worked in the fast food industry, and basically my only knowledge of it is it sucks. I do have, you know, and I think we can all agree with that. I still do think that the people who work in it, because it sucks so much, do deserve, to have a better standard of living. So I really, really appreciate being with us today and, telling us about New York Communities for Change and Fast Food Forward. You said it was the org?
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much. You have a great day.
Thanks. You too.
And to our listeners, I just want to say thank you for being part of this. I think actually I learned more than I have in any other segment because I feel really connected and disconnected at the same time of this issue. Like what I was saying earlier, I grew up in a neighborhood where a lot of people, adult people with children and grandchildren, were working at McDonald's. That was their job. And I saw that as like the norm. I didn't even think about it like how that's supposed to be a job for teenagers. I only saw that in movies, and I thought it was an unrealistic expectation of the people in my community to be told this is not a job for you because there were no other jobs. And this is where I get torn apart because I want to say, listen, $7.25, it's not enough. It isn't. I don't think it's enough for anybody. I mean, unless you live in, Afghanistan, $7.25 an hour, it's really doesn't buy much. And I want to say increase it. People deserve to live better. I want everybody to have a job that they can, pay their rent, buy food, take care of their children, of their families, and maybe save a little bit. But it is a dream, and I don't think a lot of people can afford to do, afford is not the correct answer. Just have the opportunities to be involved in those jobs. And, Stan scared me there. Black guy coming into the studio, people. Black guy coming into the studio. Oh, it's just Stanley. See, you don't like that,
Hi,
Stanley?
Stanley.
No, but anyway, where I was going about that, it's just like I said, it was something that I saw all around me that I saw as a norm, and it isn't until like now that I'm an adult that I see like it is impossible to live on $7.25 an hour. I make more than 4 times that amount, and I still sometimes I'm like, oh crap, this other bill and this other bill and this other bill needs to get paid, and I have to do this and I have to do that. And if I want to plan a vacation, it requires some thought and some methodology. You know, I have to plan it out. Exactly, right? And it's just like seems a little bit more like there has to be some change. I am not convinced that they will get the change that they're asking for. I don't think that they're going to get $15 an hour. I highly doubt it. I got paid that as an intern when I was in college. So I definitely do not think that a lot of people are with the mentality that the work deserves that amount of money. But something does need to change. And I think it's more about what do we do to get people jobs that are better qualified, better jobs.
Yeah, and I was.
You made it sound like he had a statement.
No, I just wanted to add in, like, it's true. They should be getting paid more, and the ridiculous amount of money that CEOs get paid. That ratio, CEOs compared to their employers, has actually that gap has been increasing over time. In the 1970s, it was way closer.
It was like 16 times
Yes.
the average worker. Now it's like 400 times.
400 times.
Or maybe 300. Either way, it's
And the
still a
thing
lot.
is, there's so
Ridiculous.
many policies put in place and lobbyists, they've done so many things on their behalf to better their situation. So it's like, what happened to the middle class worker? What happened to the working class? What happened to our voice? And I think that that's what's imperative here. It's the fact that bottom line is, if you can't relate to people making $7.25, you definitely aren't relating to those CEOs. So at the bottom, for the most part, we're all in the same boat.
The craziest thing to me regarding this situation is not just the fact that wages are decreasing and as CEO profits are skyrocketing. It's also that there's a new technological side to this, and that's through automation technology, which is phasing out even fast food workers. I mean, pretty much the fast food industry is almost pretty much automated. It's just there's
Somebody
the
pressing
facade
the buttons.
at this point where there's some people who are doing the work.
No, you're absolutely.
So as people get phased out of just the very mere basis of having a job, then we're going to have the conversation of not just should people be getting paid more, but are people going to be able to get jobs, period.
Yeah, we see that everywhere.
That was a
too.
discussion, though, like in the 70s for a while when the economic policy started to turn towards like the four-day work week and things of that nature. Because I know this sounds funny to people, but the Jetsons was considered an educational show at a point, saying, it really was.
A robot made.
They said, like, oh, well, this is going to teach us about
future.
how it's going to be. Like, it was a big question amongst policy analysts. What's the world going to be like when people don't have to work?
Here
And certain things like that. Now, sadly, because I think the market has overtaken it, we have a situation where people don't have to work,
but they still are.
Well, not only that, but I'm saying, but they're forced to work because
But they have to because they need to survive. I mean, they need to.
Well, the thing is,
paid.
right now, in terms of raw resources on the planet, our technological ability to provide enough for all forever, for every single person on the planet, we have that ability, and we've had it for over 100 years. So the idea that anyone has to work in a raw, physical way is not true anymore.
Nope.
That's the basis of what my entire work was with my book.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point with that. But in the now, at this moment, just working where I work at, there are people who can't even afford to spend $250 to get on the bus. So, whether it's fast food or low wage or entry level, we need to do something to give these people the ability to take care of themselves.
Right.
$15 an hour, I don't know, but something, because when you live in a world where people can't even afford to walk out of their house because it's too expensive, it's a problem. And we have that. And I always say I'm struggling. Then I see some of the people who I work with, and I don't even know the beginning of struggle.
I know.
And that to me is the conundrum of the society that we're living in right now. Right now, it's not physical. Yeah. It's all in affordability. It's not physical. If there used to be a time where it really was. There was a time when you'd wake up in the morning and you and your mother and father would have to have a big family so that you could go out into the field, till the land, be able to get some profit out of the food that you grow, sell that in the market, and be able to get some type of subsistence. Right now, we're in a real world where everything is limited by finances merely
Everything is
while
automated,
still
too.
everything is available.
A lot of things are automated.
And everything is automated. So when you bring up the Jetsons, it's a strange world where we're living in a world with iPhones and flat screen television. This is the Jetsons outside of the jetpacks.
Yeah, we're
and
not
the
flying
cars.
We're not flying
But outside
yet.
of that, like everything else is Jetson as it could be.
Yeah.
But we're still struggling.
Well,
on
you know
the
what?
phones.
I think that we should replace Stanley with a robot that works the computers. It's just machines, Stan. We don't really need a human for that.
Never letting go of
Plays
Stanley.
music. So that is my suggestion to save some money that
I'm
we don't
watching
get
you.
paid for here at Let Your Voice Be Heard.